Welcome back to the Arbitrage.Run show with Kevin and Donkey Teeth. What's happening, Kevin? We got Breeding 4.0. Super exciting, right?
Just a little bit going on with ZED. Kind of feels like old times. There's just so much head spinning, but a lot of fun, which is a welcomed change / return for ZED.
Yeah, having like a discovery element where we're like speculating on how things work, which, I feel like we kind of got robbed of that in the early days of 1.0 before like everything came crashing down. Like I feel like they spoiled that breeding algorithm by explaining how like distance preference and variance and baseability worked, which at the time we were like dying for that information and super excited to get it, but it kind of, it's careful what you wish for, right? That everything's figured out and there's not much of a game anymore, right?
Yeah, there needs to be a little mystery, but it's nice to have odds back too, because I don't know, for whatever reason, that tells you probably more than anything, but there's something about the mystery and just like the immediate knowing with odds that just, I don't know, keeps you coming back for more.
Well, teaser here. Later in the show, we're going to get into a little bit more about odds because I've been asking you since they came out, which is, I don't know, time. Time is an illusion here in Zed world, but maybe 2 months it's been out, and I've asked you several times, like, are you still confident that these odds are accurate? And your answer's always been, yeah, I think they're really accurate. But we got a little bit of a light bulb going on over there. Like you've identified at least one horse that odds don't really seem to be matching up. So. Maybe we've got a little bit of speculation on why that might be and what's going on that we'll talk about later in the show, right?
Yeah, it's a good teaser. I won't hint what end of the spectrum it's on, but it's on one of them.
Thank you. So yes, on this show we got about 45 minutes or so. Kevin's got to go to the chiropractor, get limber so he can click the buttons better later tonight and beat everybody. Yeah, it's a finger chiropractor.
Yeah. Right.
So yes, we're going to talk about we're bringing back the Zombie Arbitrage Maiden. We're working with Joe on that. He's got the blog up. We'll run through some of the changes on the Zombie Arbitrage Maiden, which it's starting. The ZED Maiden is next week because of the level rebalance that has gone down with ZED and the limited impact of leveling now relative to how it used to be. We're not in a rush to have those horses run, so it's going to be after the ZED Maiden finals take place. We're going to have the Zombie Maiden run. So registration is going to open on Sunday when the ZED, actually he might open it like today or tomorrow. We're recording this on Thursday. Oh, it's a leap year. Thursday, February 29th. We're recording this.
Yeah, the rarest of holidays. So happy leap day to everyone.
Yeah, I'll catch you in 4 years. So yes, we're bringing it back. The ZED Maiden starts on February 3rd that night in the U.S., Sunday, February 4th, other places, UTC, I guess they call it Monday, February 4th. And it runs a week long, I think, right? Free racing this time, just free. It doesn't sound like there's any paid planned. I don't think that was very popular, the paid.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what they're doing with Class 1. Is it still going to be that weird, like 2-day cadence because they don't want horses leveling too much? I haven't heard one way or the other there, even though they may have said it.
They may have. This is why we need to do live streams so that people can tell us all the things that we don't know in chat. Next one will be live. And so, yes, we'll bring back the Zombie Arbitrage Maiden. We'll run through the rules and a few changes there. Won't spend too much time on it because I think most of the people watching the show are familiar. I will put links to those rules in the description of this show and a tutorial from Joe. And I think I did a tutorial too. Maybe I'll put all that in the description on how to actually join that contest over on the Zombie Racing site. Then we're going to talk about the breeding changes, some things that we've been seeing in breeding 4.0, some interesting results there. And then we're going to talk about the level rebalance and the odds that I already teased there. Anything else that I'm forgetting, Kevin? That's the plan here, right?
I think that's plenty for 40 minutes.
Yeah. Let's get to it. Okay, here's the Zombie Arbitrage Maiden. So what's changing here, Kevin? Zombie Arbitrage Maiden 4, it's the 4th rendition. It's going to be pretty similar to previous ones. I guess the big change is that there's only going to be 2 groups now. We're going to group the legendaries and exclusives together in one pool, I guess we call it, and then we're going to group the elites, crosses, and pacers together in another pool. the thinking behind this, Kevin. Well, I'll let you run through our thought process here.
Yeah, I mean, I think for one, it's less segmented, so you only have 6 groups, right? So the 2 buckets and the 3 funnels, so 6 different kind of tournaments going on will make each of them a little more, I guess, competitive, higher possible rewards. Because last time we had like the cross sprint, for example, may have had like 3 entries. So it'll help just have bigger prize pools. And most importantly, I don't think levels mean as much as they did in past maidens, definitely in class 1. So when you're thinking about a legendary horse is almost guaranteed to be in class 1, going up against an exclusive who may have a 30% chance, a 499 can play against these 550s now, much better than they could have a month ago. So that helps. And then also with 4.0, from what we can tell, they've softened some of the caps. So now like you can have exclusives land in C1 at a much higher rate. You can have elites landing in C3. So it's just less rigid from a level cap standpoint as well.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And then something else that we'll talk about. Let's circle back on this. The other point that I want to talk about on exclusives versus legendaries, and some speculation on how breeding 4.0 is working. Let's go through the other changes first, and then circle back to a little bit more on that conversation. So the other changes here, Kevin, we've got 12 gate, 12 horse. Joe's got here 12 gate, 12 horse. In each of the races and all the way through the entire format. The qualifying, I think it is in the finals, right? We're going to have 12 horses advance. I don't even remember having that discussion, to be honest. No, it's 6, only 6 advance. Okay. So qualifying will be 12 horse races. Then the top 6 will advance. Yeah. The top 6 will advance.
I'm fine with that. Like, I like the idea of the qualifying mattering a little more, right? I mean, that's one feedback we got was you could have a really good qualifying performance, which is the 4 race bigger sample, and all of a sudden choke in one race and not do as well. So by having it more exclusive, being a top 6, go to the final, it just puts a little more weight on the bigger sample of races.
Yeah, and something else that Joe suggested and we're implementing here along those same lines is there's going to be a qualifying bonus. So if you finish top 2 in qualifying in your respective bucket funnel, there is going to be a payout, and that's listed down here in the payout section. 5%, 10% for first, 5% for second of all the money that comes in there. So that's another change, qualifying bonus. I don't know if this is a change or not, because I think we did it last time. There's a raced versus unraced fee. I guess what we changed, you can now race up to 10 times before you decide if you want to enter the raced portion. And it's a 50% premium. I think we reduced that. I think it was like 100% last time, right?
Yeah. Once again, like there's the definite advantage of knowing like what the horse is when you sign up. But in the past one, it was really like if you're only going up against exclusives and you have one that lands 510, you're going to have that thing 550 by the end of it. And it's a huge advantage, particularly in that group. That's leveling's not as much of an issue like we already talked about. So still an advantage, but probably not worth the premium we had last time.
Yeah. So these are the changes. Oh, the other thing on the 12 gate race is it does add a little bit more weight to winning, right? The 6 gate favors a little bit more of those balanced, more stable, not so much the high variance horses. So the winners get a little bit more weighting in the qualifying section of this format. Then you got a 6 gate race in the finals for your funnel segment. And then we move on the winners of each of those into, I guess it's the top 2, right? Yeah, we do the top 2 now. The top 2 from that 6 gate finals race for your segment will move on to the grand final. Yep. All right. Everything follow off tracking. And then no super breeds. No super breeds is the last change here. Yeah, I think we probably could allow super breeds just so, but let's see how it plays out one time without them. I mean, I have the super breeds pulled up here. We're going to talk about them in the breeding segment, but there was a 660. So that'd be pretty big advantage, especially when we're lumping exclusives and legendaries together, right?
Yeah, you would dominate. There's always a price that I guess we could add the premium to make it roughly more level of a playing field. But Yeah, we'll try to figure that out. Open to suggestions for the future as well. But that horse, you would think, should clean up quite well in the big money ZED Maiden with a little luck. So
Yeah.
we'll keep it out of this for now.
All right. Well, here's the rest of the rules. You can go through and read through them.
The other thing I'll mention here, timing wise, we're planning on running this the Monday after the ZED Maiden. So sign up before your horse gets to 10 races. That's where we're cutting it off. Really anytime in the next week plus. I think starting, what are we trying to have registration out tomorrow? Or are we doing beginning of next week?
I think he said tomorrow he was going to try to get it open.
Yeah, so Friday, March 1st. Any time between that, and I think we'll have it run all the way through March 9th. And then the actual races will populate and run the day after the ZED Maiden. So there's no risk of these running and impacting your qualifying being less than 21 races. Once again, now that leveling doesn't matter as much, we feel more comfortable increasing the runway, so we're not overlapping at all or trying to potentially impact a horse's ability to qualify for the ZED Maiden. So that's one, I think, improvement to this Maiden we didn't have last time.
Are you thinking we live stream the grand final on Thursday, March 14th that night, or what's your thought there?
I like that. Yeah. People seem to like Thursday nights. If there's another night people like better, we can be open to it. But I think we could either stream, if people want to see the grand final, that could be the live stream. If people want to see the funnel finals, we could do that as well. So Wednesday, Thursday night, and then just let us know what you would prefer to see live stream.
Yeah, sounds good. And then here's the pricing, since we did alter this a little bit. So championship, this is the legendaries and exclusives. So it's $30. Well, currently it's $30. We'll see where Ethereum is. I mean, maybe it's not $30 any longer. I don't know. It's been pretty volatile out there in crypto world, but it was $30, 0.0085 ETH to enter an unraced exclusive or legendary, and then it's a 50% premium, as you said, $45 ish to enter after you've raced it, and you can wait until you hit 10 races. If you hit 11 races, you're not going to be eligible anymore. So just be careful there. And then Challenger, this is the elite cross and pacer segment. $10 if you're entering unraced, $15 if you're entering raced. Here's the payouts. Enough said here, right?
Yeah, I think there's one typo. It's at February 9th. You could register. I think it's until March 9th. So it is Saturday night. It was in the text somewhere else. But yeah, so that is the correct date, Saturday, March 9th, the day before the ZED 1 runs.
Yeah, I don't know where that, but disregard the February date, I suppose. I don't see it.
That's right.
Here.
Yep.
I think this is just the what the Ethereum price was.
Right above that. Right.
Cross this out. All right, got it. So let's talk about breeding. So the other thing I wanted to talk about here, Kevin, why I think bucketing exclusives and legendaries together makes sense, other than what we've already talked about with the level rebalance and levels not mattering as much in class 1, those horses not getting such a huge advantage on the exclusives. Well, first of all, a lot more exclusives can land in class 1. I guess that's the first point. I think we bred 2 of the first 8 exclusives that we bred landed in class 1. I think if I had to guess, I would guess if you're breeding high level legendaries together, or a high level legendary with a Genesis, or a high level exclusive with a Genesis, I'm going to guess your hit rate's probably somewhere between 15 and 20% into class 1. You think that's a fair blind guess off of our tiny sample?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say with those qualifiers, I agree. I think overall it's probably 10% if you're just having a random pair of legendaries go.
Yeah, if you're throwing 2 class 2 legendaries together, you're probably landing in class 2 or class 3, it seems. Which, again, we don't have a whole lot of sample, and we haven't dug through data on this or anything like that. So these are it's
definitely higher than it was before. I think I can confidently say that.
So the other thing here, what we've noticed, and again, this is totally anecdotal. We've done, I don't know, less than 20 breeds, right? 20-ish, maybe.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. It seems, from our experience, our exclusives are coming out with more variants than the legendaries. So just, again, total early wild speculation here, dangerous speculation. Possible that they nerfed variants on legendary breeds. And I should say, maybe only when they land in class 1. We're still kind of working through this. This is a working theory here, right? But what we've noticed is these class 1 horses don't seem to be coming out with as much variance as the class 2 horses. Is that fair to say, Kevin?
Yeah, and I haven't like dug too deeply into this, just based on our 20 horse sample that seems.
And a few others that we've seen. The couple other killers that we've seen have been exclusives too, right?
Yeah. So like if you found a killer that's a legendary, feel free to drop in the comments. We can look at it. But yeah, like I can think of 3, maybe 4 killers, like 1.0 style killers that maybe we can look at that were all bred down the line a bit. I think they're all exclusive, maybe 1 elite.
I think the 3 that we have highlighted here are exclusive. Let me see. What was Saucy Bean? Saucy Bean was elite. Okay, you're right.
Yeah. So those are the ones where like it seems like they're exceeding variance for or matching 1.0 variance of the ancestors. Where I just haven't seen that yet for the for our legendaries. Yeah. So I don't know if there's something to that. I don't know if there's like a stronger mutation of variance on these like exclusive breeds. Maybe so, but it'll be interesting to track that going forward. Or maybe there's, dare I say, variance power creep. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, my first theory is always the pie theory that I love. Somehow, this is what we started to notice once odds came back in class 2, right? We much rather have a low level roll in class 2 in breeding 3.0. Once we saw the odds, we started to notice like there were none of the like 480 to 500 starting level horses that had anywhere near the variance as the horses that landed like between 401 and 430, right?
Yeah, they were few and far between. Like there were some of like I think Charlie Cheval kids that were up there, but if you took the top 100 like variance horses in class 2, I bet 80 to 90 started below 450. So it definitely felt like a thing.
And you don't notice as much in class 1, but I have my suspicions, again, without looking at data, that those lower level class 1 starting level horses ended up with more variance too, versus like the few and far between 530 plus horses that you saw in breeding 3.0. But again, don't really have as much, can't even really provide too many examples on that. It's more of my suspicion. But anyway, the way that I kind of rationalize that is that somehow the breeding algorithm sets like fills in like each horse has like a pie, right? And it fills in with base ability. And then I don't know how it would work now that I'm saying this. It doesn't really add up, right? Because then there would be nothing left in the lower levels. So
that's where I think the pie changes by breed type, right? So you have your best exclusives if they don't have variance pop up to like level 510. And the old one, they would be really high level exclusives. But the ones that have a ton of variance could potentially pop out at like 405. And then for an elite, that 405 elite now has no variance because it doesn't have enough. But the level 301 elites have a ton of variance.
Yeah. What you're saying, I'm sure makes sense. But I was thinking through something while you were saying it. So the way that it worked in breeding 1.0, right? Like the reason we saw so many of these like plotters that had no variance, like it seems like it filled in the whole pie with base ability and left no room for variance. So I'm thinking the way that it worked must be like in breeding 3.0, it would roll the traits and you had the maximum amount of, let's say everything had to add up to 100 when you add up base ability, distance preference, and variance. And then the level is determined after that, right? So like if you a lot of your pie filled up with variance, naturally there's not as much room for base ability, right? And so you end up rolling a lower level number and coming out in the 405 kind of range, right? Because there's not that much base ability, and we know that variance isn't going into that equation a lot, something like that.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say, where like
you're saying
the way levels work is basically an approximation for base ability and maybe a little bit of distance preference. So if you have an exclusive say the exclusive cap used to be at 520. If an exclusive came out at level 520, it was almost all base ability distance preference. But if one's coming out at like 405, that leaves a lot of the pie left to be variance. And then it just staggers down where if an elite is capped at 410 and it comes out at 305, then it's got a lot of variance. So it just staggers down based on breed type. No idea if that's still the case with the new one. That's more of a breeding 3.0 illustration.
Well, I think that's kind of, we're saying that's our suspicion based on what we've seen. The better horses, again, tiny sample, right? But the better horses are landing in class 2, the higher variance horses, because their pie theoretically didn't get filled in as much with base ability. If it did, they'd land in class 1. So these horses that are landing like up in the 590s, 600s have a ton of base ability, and there wasn't much room left for variance when the pie got filled in theoretically.
And what if that now the size of the pie stays? I'm sure we've lost like all of the viewers. Half lost.
There's 3 people that understand what the hell we're talking
but what
about.
if we're very pie in the sky at the moment? But what if now the pie is always the same size? So, and the pie now is like 600 is the cap. So now exclusives naturally come in lower, but by nature, they're going to have more of the pie left towards like the 600 cap. And then you would see that's why exclusives always have more variance, or on average would have more variance than legendary. And then maybe it's like crosses now have the most left. And that can get really interesting if you think about Evo going away, where like maybe you want to breed into class 2 or even class 3, because that leaves way more variance to then just level up if it's easy enough to level up. And then the best C1 killers take 250 races to get there, but then they're the highest variance best horses.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. I'm following, and
that's good. I'm not really, so I'm glad you are.
Kind of. I brought this theory up to Jamie from I always forget what
LJT.
LJT. Yeah, I think that's the stable name. In our chat, and he was saying this would be terrible if they made it so that legendary or Genesis breeds aren't capable, or very, very rarely capable, of having a variance roll. I don't think it would be bad. Like, working through it, I think it adds a ton more strategy to the game, where like we're all kind of like stuck in this mindset. Let's take the 2 best horses in the game, breed them together, like the 2 highest levels. And that's like the only way that was the only way that we were breeding. But now, if maybe it's better to take an exclusive with a Genesis, because you can land in class 2, Evo's gone, you optimize the XP boost, it gives XP more value, it gives Zed token more value theoretically, right? And a lot of people are trying to optimize those races, and maybe you take a killer elite and breed it with a really good Genesis, and suddenly now maybe legendary studs like have had very little value, especially the Nakamotos, because of breeding fees. So it adds, if it's what we're saying, right? It might not even be, but if it is working like this, as it kind of seems to be so far, it could add a lot of different layers to strategy and breeding out bloodlines, right?
Yeah, and I'll remind the audience, as of the time we're taping this, we're like four days into the new breeding system. So this all may just sound absolutely stupid by the time you're listening to it. We are trying our best, and kind of putting our tinfoil hats on the best we can at the moment.
No. I mean, this should be out within 24 hours, so it shouldn't sound too stupid by then. But in a week from now, it could sound really stupid.
YouTube lives forever, so it should be a year from now, and we are just sounding ridiculous.
Yeah, somebody's going to clip some sound bites from this,
right.
Especially the part that I think we were just saying nonsense about different types of pie. I think you said lemon meringue in there at some point.
Yeah, pie in the sky, all that.
Yeah, I like a good coconut cream.
I respect that.
Okay. So what else on breeding? What do you want? You want to look at? We're already looking at Saucy Bean here, right? I have it up on the screen.
Yeah. Shout out to No Vanity. That's one of the good ones. I just figured we could highlight some of the freaks that have come out in the first few days of 4.0. It is kind of chaos, because I mean we're seeing that extreme variance roll quite a bit. When you compare it to like how many breeds it took to get the freaks out of 1.0, right? Like we had 1.0 for over a year, and it probably whittled down to like the top 100. And we've had 3 horses at least in the first 3 days of 4.0 that are kind of matching these levels of variance. It's pretty interesting, and I think good for the game finally that these 1.0 horses are being dethroned. The one thing I don't love is anybody who invested heavily in 3.0. It's tough, right? They're just going to get lapped by these horses. So I guess rake it in while you can. That's just an unfortunate byproduct of this that I don't know how they could avoid by fixing the game.
Well, it is in the short term unfortunate and hurt the value of all those horses that we just bought. But theoretically, in the long term, those horses should have breeding value.
Mm-hmm.
And if this has the positive impact on the game that we hope it does and could see it having, then the value of their offspring goes up. And again, like we always say, rising tide lifts all ships, and you could end up with much more valuable horses, even though that horse is not going to really make much on the track anymore. You could have because like to breed these horses, these killers, like you need good horses. So if you had a good 3.0 horse, it's a good breeding piece, right?
Yeah, and the game is just so much more fun with that upside, like lotto ticket being an option, right? It seems like it very much is. What I would love to see is as we get more and more of a sample, have some of these really good variance horses come from the occasional donkey, right? Like I hope that's built in because the game needs something more than just good coming from good. There needs to be that like, okay, I could just breed 2 donkeys together. It doesn't have to have the same hit rate as strategically breeding, but that was kind of some of the magic of 1.0. That was way too random, but there could be some lotto element, and I think it'd be good for the game.
Yeah, agreed. Even if it's, I don't know, 1 in 400 or something like that, right?
Yeah, I was saying like if you have 100 freaks, I think having 25 of the freaks come from random pairings and 75 being strategic would be a decent balance.
Yeah. We should, we are pretty excited about this breeding, but we always do need to try to keep in scope when we're putting this information out there that we have no idea what the game is going to look like in 6 months, which is kind of terrifying, right?
It is. Yeah, everything with ZED I kind of just think about in the next quarter and then try to keep that as well with the valuations we pay on like what we buy things for. But yeah, who knows what ZED's going to look like if and when we ever come out of beta. I don't know what Nier's been working on. Sounds like they've been hard at work. I like these updates so far, but they prefaced these updates very much in the fact that like this is not the end state of the game. So in what they say, the end of Q2, we'll get an update on kind of a roadmap for the future state.
I don't know. Well, yeah, I think it said Q2. So theoretically by the end of Q2.
Yep.
But who knows? Maybe it will be April that we find out. I'm just like, I'm hoping that they do some community feedback groups and take in a lot of thoughts from the community so that we don't repeat, breeding 3.0 and the collapse of ZED because community just doesn't feel heard and feels disrespected.
Yeah, and get feedback from all different types stables, right?
Of course,
Don't get just from the most vocal ones on Twitter. Get it from big, small, new, old. I would say emphasize like the people who've been around for a while. I mean, and like maybe even poll some of the people who are OGs and like haven't played in a long time. Because at the end of the day, that's a lot of what's funding this thing is the people who bought the Z1s for 30 grand. They're still sitting on that asset that is they've pretty much written off at this point, I think. But it'd be good to restore some of that value that they minted these things at.
Yeah. Those are the people we need to get back into the game. And the good news is this breeding update, like there's definitely people that are getting a little bit of FOMO seeing, oh shit, you can breed good horses again. Really? I want one, like
Yeah.
everybody that ever got into ZED is wants that lottery aspect, right? It's fun.
Actually good timing for like with aging because a lot of the freaks who've been running a lot can't race more than once a day. So like at most, if you're actually trying to qualify for a tournament, you're probably racing once, like every other week. You're going for a tournament, so it should have a pretty good runway, even in the open class, for some of the best 3.0s and especially some of these good 4.0s to have a life after 100 races.
Yeah. So getting back to our breeding discussion, we'll just run through these horses and then talk a little bit more about the level rebalance and the odds thing before we wrap up here.
So This one I think is, I mean, you see the bean, you know it came from Vanilla Bean. It's pretty
And
clear.
Saga Bolton, nice
Yeah.
Genesis. So Vanilla Bean
It's
with Saga Bolton here. This
really
is
well
probably
bred.
Saga too. Yeah, this is inbred Saga Bolton on both sides.
Yeah, that's interesting. Hasn't been tested against 1.0s yet in an open class, but you can kind of tell when you get those odds in a less than 250, especially. And for me, when I'm evaluating variance, I look at that place to win ratio. So if you divide wins divided by place odds, you kind of get a feel for what percent of your top threes are wins, which helps establish like a variance metric. So anytime that's even approaching 2, you have by far the most variance in that field. 3 is average. So typically when it's 3.0 versus 3.0, the best horse would be like 2.3. This one pulling 4.9 win odds and 2.7 place. Quick math, that's probably like 1.8, which is insane. So haven't seen it yet. Fully expect this one to dominate even in 1.0s. So no vanity. I know you're trying to hold these off for the maiden, but if you want to throw a test out there and shoot me a link in Discord, I would love to evaluate the open class with this horse.
Yeah, you can use one. I mean, this horse is gonna be fine in the those
But
free.
There have been some others that tested against 1.0s. I know we had one. If we want to do that one next.
You want to look at ours? Yeah, let's look at ours.
Lots of wrong. And there's one from Fleur that is probably even better than lots of wrong. So
yeah, we'll look at that next. Here's lots of wrong. We've raced it 7 times already. See, you don't need to save all of them.
We raced these before they actually announced the maiden, put a stop on it. And we actually, I think, are going to qualify this one for the less than 100, which has been boosted this week. So 3 of the races went there. You can see it came in first, second, first. So I think that's going to be enough. Pulling, once again, like those same 4.9 to 2.7 odds. And I actually just sent it in a 2000 open class. So if you want to click on, actually do the 1800. I think that's probably a better distance. Yeah. So it's a level 480. So not even top of class level wise. 18, I think it's its best. And it's already flaming against some of these like freaks of C2 mids. And then
well, too much noise ours. Yeah, too much noise had 7.2 odds here.
Yeah, that's our best 1800 horse. And this horse is already matching that odds-wise at a 20 level disadvantage. Rebirth is about as good as it gets. There's no Vanilla Bean or Purple Drip, which I think would edge this horse out. But, I mean, if you're flaming against some of these freaks and at a level disadvantage, you're at least a comp to the 1.0 beasts of C2. So really encouraged by this one. Excited to race it more. It's taking everything in me to not do an 8th race just to see, but trying to be responsible here.
You know, after we bred this one, and we have, what do we have? Probably 3 of the 20 we bred feel like really good horses. And it was probably like 3 of the first 10. And I was saying to you, do you think they like messed up this breeding algorithm? Like it shouldn't be this easy for us, right? And then we just went on terrible. I mushed it. We went on a terrible cold streak. The next 10 horses have been like shit.
They really have. And they've been like some quality breeds as well. But yeah, I'd say we have 3 or 4 that I feel are going to be close to like the 1.0 levels. None this good. This is definitely our best, but it'll be interesting continuing because we still probably have half of our breeding left to do.
Yeah, we have. I mean, we really haven't bred that many good Genesis, so it is kind of hard to say our legendary theory about the variants, but we really haven't seen any. It's also hard to compare in Class 1 versus Class 2. So that could be another weak link in our wild speculation at the beginning of the show. But yeah, we did breed lots of dots 3 times, 3 pretty much donkeys, which lots of dots was a monster breeder in 3.0. So maybe it's coincidence, but
lots of wrong from lots of
publisher. Yeah, lots of publisher.
So it's in there still. The legacy lives on, even if they did nerf the legendary breed.
Yeah. Okay, so that's lots of wrong. You can see the odds pulling here, and then when you compare to the horses in these races, like it's just an absolute beast. Then you mentioned the Fleur's Prodigy horse coming from Norgay.
Yeah, I think this is the best one I've seen. I don't know if it's that close, to be honest. So this is one where it's interesting, right? You have Fleur de Lis, who is a really top tier 1.0, started in C4, tons of variants, leveled all the way up C2, with probably, I would say, a top 3 variants Genesis with Cosmic Statesman. So you get the exclusive tag, but you are breeding with the Genesis. So really interesting outcome here. And I want to say Norgi threw this, kind of took our method and threw it in open class at level 435. So not even close to the top. Threw it in open class. Also threw the mom into this, Fleur de Lis, who typically is top tier open class. So maybe click, I think either of those.
2.
The non-flame, I think, is what I looked at. So it came in second here.
And once again, dominated Born to Finish.
Born to Finish, another top notch, not even close, and a 65 level disadvantage. Super Saga was a good 3.0, 0.14s, just as a kind of benchmark. And then that's kind of like when you want to have like a regular person in the Olympics, just so you can see how people stacked up for perspective. That's the 14 from Super Saga. Diablo is another really good one, 7.8, close to 500 level. But then Fleur de Lis, who I think is almost always the top odds, and not 500 yet either, still could not match its Prodigy's odds of 6.6. So
at level 435.
At 435, I think if that one gets to 500, I think it's the best mid in C2 in the game, like period. And that's probably one you would think long and hard about immediately leveling up. So
you like this one more than Vanilla Bean? You predict better odds?
It's close. Just the fact that it's 435, I think yes. I mean, it's got 65 levels to gain. I think if you threw Vanilla Bean in this right now, like VB would win, but
not by much, probably, right?
I think VB would be like 5.8 or 6. I haven't dove that deep into it, but I think it's better. And then who knows? I guess 2000 is its best distance, but you don't really know that quite yet.
There's not much data, yeah.
But once again, look at that ratio. The 6.6 to 3.2 in a field that's already packed with variance, and you're pulling like a 2.1 ratio. That's insane. Click on the 7.8 one. That might be a little more realistic of like a worst case. So I'll be curious if it actually stacked up. Okay. So this is where you have Born to Finish. Purple Drip is a beast. So this is interesting, though. It's maybe a segue into some odds talk, where you have Fleur's Prodigy here, flaming, but at 7.8 this time. You have a like horse in Born to Finish in this one. Now instead of pulling 9, pulls a 7 and beats it. So that's interesting. Like these variance horses sometimes do jockey back and forth in terms of who has the best odds.
Seems like maybe Purple Drip stole a lot of those top end races from Fleur's Prodigy with that level
and I
500.
know you see it more and more like with the lower level horses too. Like they fluctuate, but still like 7.8 in this field is pretty insane. I think Purple Drip and Vanilla Bean are probably the 2 best mids in C2. So no surprise it's losing there, but reasonable to think if this is kind of its floor outcome odds wise, sample size of 2, but when it gets 65 levels, it's going to be comparable to Purple Drip at least.
You know, I had this was the first. Let me show you. Give Zedge a little bit of love here. We show everybody love on this show, Kevin. Z lead, Zedge. We don't discriminate. Z-Sim, Barack Royal. This was the first one that I saw. Came out at a level 596 after I saw like the 660 super breed, and I was like, we got to start breeding, Kevin. Like we waited like a 24 hours into breeding, thinking like maybe we'll wait for the maiden, and then you're like, no, let's fire away.
Yeah, that's right. So
yeah, this one, I mean, coming from Killer Parents Barack and Ebony Royal, but if you dig in on these odds, there's an 8.4, but this really, it did not get that much variance, and we know Barack is one of the best variants. Genesis mids, at least Nakamoto, right, in the game.
Yeah, certainly makes you wonder and strengthens the pie theory, doesn't it?
Yeah, pie theory, man. So yeah, just wanted to kind of show this. What's possible on the level side? I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because this horse theoretically should do really well in the maiden, right? But it's not going to be a great paid racer at level 700. It doesn't seem, if you dig in on these odds again, like these fields were not that strong.
No, it's going to be interesting to look at like once we get a full crop of C1 horses, if you like compare the crop of that to the crop in C2, and we'll actually see if like does the variance check out. Like are these horses able to play in C1 open class against some of those variance freaks the same way that a level 435 Fleur's Prodigy is able to play immediately as well. So obviously they'll need a little leveling up to catch up, but I mean, it's like the level 600 is close to 700. I mean, basically as close as Fleur was.
I feel like this strengthens it too. Our CEO named horse. We've got a near as well. Near Efrat was already taken, but I got Efrat here, and High Aspirations is a class 4. Or you know what? One other thing, Kevin, I wanted to show before we go back over to this horse. Let me go back to this Fleur's Prodigy horse. Notice Cosmic Statesman is a starting level 385, class 3, and Fleur de Lis is a starting level 264. And they dropped a 432 in here. So really interesting. Now, what's like you would never have seen this in breeding 3.0, right?
Yeah, it's almost like starting level matters, but the breed type matters even more. I feel like in terms of the guardrails it sets for level.
Yeah, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, this is good for the game where it's not like, oh, we just want to breed all Genesis together and like it's a no-brainer, and you'd never want to use a Genesis with a legendary or an exclusive. That's how it was. This is kind of what I think a lot of the people that left the game were asking for, is to be able to breed generations down and strengthen bloodlines in the lower breed types. That's the game that I think that we're getting once they remove Evo, which is going to be, I think, in a week or something like that. And you can run this horse up to level 700 and strategically boost it and save these races and have beefed up prize pools in class 1. Like, I think that's what everybody wants. Whether they know it or not, we'll see. But anyway, any other thoughts on this one before we go back over to F-Rank, Kevin?
Nope.
All right, FRAT. So yes, this one was a class, I think High Aspirations is class 4 or something like that. Our variants mid, and then down on his much. What is down on his much? I think class 3, starting level, yes, 344. So these two kick out our FRAT horse at a level 428. Again, the bottom of class 2. Pi leaves a lot of room for the variance here. It's pulling great odds. I mean, it's not an absolute killer, right? But this is probably close to the 3.0 variance cap, right?
Yeah, this one looks like a best case in 3.0. So not a freak, but a like very good horse from two parents that don't really do much. They have a little bit of variance, but yeah, gives you some hope for kind of smashing two Genesis together that don't offer much on the racing side.
I think High Aspirations has pretty good variance. It's just it's down in class 4, and we just kind of ignored it. But I think we should probably run this one and see what kind of odds it
be
pulls.
C5, isn't it? I think it's C5.
C5, yes,
Yeah,
yes. That's
yeah.
why it's like C5.
I tried it a couple times and just
did you?
Yeah.
Here, let me see.
C5 I couldn't do it. I need to leave that out.
Yeah, 7.6, 8.8. So it's not like it was ridiculous odds. It wasn't worth your time.
But look at that ratio, 2.2, 2.3. That's got some variance, and you see it passing on.
Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to throw those out there. We've probably got what 10 minutes left, or do you have till
5:15? So yeah, 5-10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. So the other thing we want to talk about with the breeding is grandparent roles. Seems, again, totally anecdotally here, blind speculation. Seems like maybe they upped the percentage of grandparent roles based on some of the donkeys that we saw. It's like, yeah, okay, one of the 3 coming from these parents being glue was kind of, that was a high hit rate, I guess, in breeding 3.0, or a high miss rate, high grand. You can tell if there's a grandparent role if it's like coming from 2 really good legendaries and the full is just absolute crap, right? But we've had like 2 sets of offspring, like all 3 offspring, just absolutely terrible. It just feels like maybe they upped the percentage of grandparent roles, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible, which can work for you or against you if you're kind of breeding. That's where you're talking about with 3.0. If you have a really purely bred one that comes from good parents and there's no holes in the bloodline, then you're fine. And like maybe the grandparent role is actually juiced up a bit. I don't know. The Lots of Wrong one is interesting to me, where like it's the best horse in the bloodline by a lot. So like, did it pull one of the grandparents and it just get like a nice variance mutation on top of that? Who knows? We'll figure it out as we go. But it will reward the 3.0 horses, 2.0 horses that have no holes in the bloodline.
Yeah, I mean, same for Saucy Bean too. I mean, this cacao bean is nothing special here, so it must have pulled Vanilla Bean in a grandparent role on Saucy Bean, right?
Vanilla Saga, just the nuts, which is cool. Like if you think about it, maybe grandparent roles, I don't know, are 25%, let's say. So if it went grandparent, and got the right grandparent, I mean, it could be maybe it's 50% for the parent, 20 or 25 for each of the grandparents. To get like the 25% and the 25%, you're looking at like a 5% chance that it hit that roll. So that alone is a 1 in 20 pull. And then on top of that, you probably have some range of outcomes on the variance on top of that. So you could easily see a situation where that's like a top 1% even for that combo of breeds.
Yeah. And we haven't seen any like evidence that great grandparent rolls are very frequent, but again, it's still early, right?
Reason.
So we want to talk about the level rebalance really quick. We got 5 minutes here, Kevin. I'll just kick it over to you. Say whatever you want to say about level rebalance and the odd stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think the level rebalance is a pretty exclusive to C1 piece. But effectively, yeah, they shrunk the amount of BA that is added for each level in class 1. I think really it just opened up things quite a bit for the like variance horses that weren't fully leveled. So one that jumped out to me on the marathon side was a horse that was bought last month called Ovechkin, I think. It's a marathoner, probably level, I don't know at this point. They've been leveling up like crazy, but it's like a level 650. And it was pulling good odds before. We're talking like good odds as in like 8s, 9s, just because it had the variance, but it had 50 levels of base ability disadvantage. Now that they've changed that to, it might be divided by 4, divided by 8, depending on who you ask, but at least divided by 4. Hey, look at that U. Look at the recent pulls it's had. Ignore the double up, but like when you look at this horse go to the open class, not the top 3 or not the 500, but like the one that came in 12th in, even where it pulled 6.8. This was an open where it's 650. It had Festus in there. I want more. It had Notorious, who's kind of our version of this. It had Ready, Set, Boom. And this thing is pulling the best odds of anybody. And then actually, what was it? Did it beat? Okay, so it came in second to I Want More. But this is one of those things where variance kind of jockeys the order of these things. It's beaten I Want More quite a bit head to head at a big level disadvantage too. So,
and Notorious too.
And Notorious, yeah. So this horse is a freak, and it was always going to be a freak, but it leveled the playing field quite a bit for all of these. Like Notorious, I Want More, all of them are better than any level 700 horse right now at Marathon. So I don't know what the cutoff is. Maybe it's level 600 when these freaks can start being favorites against the 700s, but it used to be like you had to be 675 to like truly be a favorite in a race. Now that's just expedited the process. So a big change there. Whether you think it's a good or bad for the game, I think remains to your perspective. But I think it's anytime you have more horses being kind of eligible to win and a quicker timeline to being competitive in class 1, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, again, we don't know how these legendary breeds work, but theoretically, probably at least with a super breed, if you get I don't even know if this is how it works, but this Hufakundo said it works, the variance super breed roll, right? If that's still a thing or ever was a thing, I don't know. But if you get that and you land at even level 600 and you get 1.0 variance, you can immediately go into open class and start kicking ass against some of these horses like RSB. How often can RSB even run now, Kevin?
Once a day in theory.
You know what? Festus is a better example because Festus is better than RSB, right? Is that
Festus
once a day too?
Once a day too. Yeah,
once a day. Yeah.
Notorious still can go every 8 hours, but those are counting down as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting game at the very least. But
and you segued into my last thing. You said Festus is a better marathoner than RSB. I would say odds would tell you yes, but click on RSB for me. What's interesting and a reason why I'm like newly skeptical of distance preference race like odds, especially because originally RSB it never felt like he got any worse, even though odds were telling you he got lapped. And initially I just chalked it up as small sample, just running hot. But yeah, look at 12-1, do 12 gates only. So let's keep it pure. And then do like 24 or 26 where he should be running. So look at these stats, right? This is RSB paid class 1, 12 gates. All right. So like if you're average, you're going to have an 8% win rate. The win rate here on a decent sample, an 81 race sample, is 28.4% for the last 3 months, which pretty much coincides with the odds era. So it's coming in the top 2 almost half the time. But if you look at these odds, right, the win odds, if you averaged all these, I bet his average odds would be like 9 to win and maybe 2.7 or so to place. So 9 odds to win implies an 11% win rate at best. We're seeing like almost triple that over an 80 race sample. So I know it's not entirely statistically significant, but in a game with small sample sizes, like there's something fishy here where RSB's like global win rate is 30%. They did all these changes with levels. It's still winning at 28% of the time. So interesting to say the least with the understating of odds. I will say like this phenomena is mostly only seen, at least what I've observed, on the poles of the spectrum, looking at like 2,600 especially. The mid odds seem to correlate very closely with actual performance. But yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I wanted to go back and see further back to see if something changed. And it really, look, you're looking
It's
at June
running hotter
1st.
now than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Like
but this was still really good, June 1st to November 29th.
right. So that would like this would
here.
be, if you're adding in like the VIG that the company needs to take, this would be like 4 to 1 odds.
Maybe something changed. Look at this. I had the wrong year. Like, look, June 1st to November 29th. This is not super impressive. 13%.
Right. That's the 7 odds you would expect.
Yeah. Huh.
And that's a bigger sample. But yeah, when you look at
it's not. This is 74 races. We had 80 some.
81. So like, is there something that changed? Is it just noise? Are we just once again kind of?
We need ZSIM. We need to call ZSIM in the bat signal.
Interesting for sure. But yeah, we can end on that. But something I'm interested in, and we'll continue to race RSB until I guess it becomes not profitable.
The wheels fall off. I mean, the wheels have almost fallen off. Like he's getting a little old, is what I'm saying.
He can't run much anymore. Right. But when he does, he's running at a.
He just needs more rest. Yeah, yep. Old man legs. Okay, Kevin, I'll let you go get the chiropractic adjustment, and maybe we'll do a show next week. Like, if you guys want a show next week, dump some stuff in the comments, questions, other horses you want us to look at, stuff like that, because it is really interesting. And if you have any speculation about breeding 4.0, we'd love to hear it, and we'll discuss it on the show, and we'll try to set up a live stream for the next one so we can get a little bit more community discussion going on and get questions and all that. It's a little bit more fun. Sound good, Kevin?
Yeah, perfect.
All right, get out there, sign up for the Zombie Arbitrage Maiden 4, and good luck with all of your breeding. We will catch you next time. Subscribe, like this on YouTube, follow us on Twitch, and take it easy, everyone.
See you.